Before she became the most photographed woman in the world, before her face adorned movie posters and her name shimmered in golden lights, she was just a little girl named Norma Jeane. Born on June 1st, 1926 in Los Angeles, her entrance into the world was quiet, uncelebrated. No stage, no applause, only uncertainty. Her mother, Gladys, struggled with mental illness, slipping in and out of reality, and her father was little more than a ghost. From the very beginning, Norma Jeane belonged to no one and everyone. The world seemed to hold her at arm's length, never quite giving her a place to belong. Her childhood was not a storybook. It was a collection of temporary shelters, foster homes, orphanages, the back bedrooms of relatives and strangers alike. There were nights when she cried quietly under thin blankets, wondering if anyone would come for her. She longed for love, not as a luxury, but as a necessity. While other children learned to play, she learned to survive. And somewhere along the way, survival became performance. Despite the loneliness, despite the instability, she dreamed. She dreamed in color, even when the world around her felt gray. She found comfort in stories, in books, in films, in the make-believe worlds where girls like her were seen and heard, adored and safe. Norma Jeane built castles in her imagination and clung to them like lifelines. She believed somehow that something greater was waiting for her beyond the shadows. At 16, in a bid to escape yet another relocation by the state, she married, not for love, not for passion, but for stability, for a roof over her head, for the illusion of permanence. It was a decision made by a child trying desperately to feel like an adult. But even then, the world outside began to notice her. There was a light in her, a curious mixture of innocence and intensity, of softness wrapped around unspoken strength. A photographer spotted her working in a factory during the war, and with a single camera click, her journey began. She became a model first. The girl who had once been overlooked and unheard now found herself at the center of every frame. Her smile lit up magazine covers. Her pose commanded attention. But it was more than beauty. It was vulnerability captured on film. She wasn't just posing. She was whispering to the world, "See me, know me, don't just admire me, understand me." The transformation from Norma Jeane to Marilyn Monroe didn't happen in a day. It was a slow burn, a delicate construction of a persona the world would never forget. The name Marilyn was given to her by studio executives. Monroe was her mother's maiden name. And together they formed a mask she would wear for the rest of her life. Blonde hair replaced brown, breathy tones, replaced a naturally deeper voice, and laughter became armor. But behind the platinum curls and red lips was still that little girl, still Norma Jeane, longing for approval, terrified of being abandoned. Hollywood didn't just want her, it consumed her. She was cast as the dumb blonde, the seductress, the innocent with a wicked grin. And though she played those parts flawlessly, she ached for more. She was intelligent, introspective, endlessly curious. She read Dostoevsky and Freud. She wrote poetry. She questioned everything: fame, beauty, her place in the world. The public fell in love with Marilyn, but few bothered to meet Norma. And the line between them grew blurrier with every year, every headline, every studio demand. But she pressed on. With each role, each smile, each heartbreak, she tried to reconcile the two halves of herself. One known by millions, the other barely understood by even those closest to her. She was rising and yet deep in Shirabway still reaching. This was not a woman who was simply discovered. This was a woman who built herself, piece by fragile piece, in defiance of every force that had told her she would never matter. From orphaned childhood to cultural icon, Marilyn Monroe was never just a sex symbol. She was a survivor, a seeker, a soul who had walked through fire and came out wrapped in satin, not untouched, but still standing. And her story was only beginning. As Marilyn's fame soared into the heavens, so did the weight of expectation press down on her shoulders. She was no longer just an actress. She was America's obsession. Every movement was documented, every dress scrutinized, every relationship sensationalized. The world adored her, but it often adored the image, not the woman. And the woman, fragile and resilient all at once, quietly began to fracture beneath the glow of the spotlight. Behind the scenes, she fought battles the cameras never captured. The studios saw her as property, a product to be packaged and sold. She was often cast in roles that flattened her depth, reduced her to a stereotype. But Marilyn Monroe wanted more than to be pretty. She wanted to be meaningful. So she rebelled. She walked off sets. She challenged directors. She took acting lessons, not to impress but to grow. She idolized legends like Marlon Brando and studied with Lee Strasberg, chasing truth through every line of dialogue. She formed her own production company, an unheard-of move for a woman at the time. It wasn't just business. It was her declaration of independence. She was not a puppet, not a pawn, and certainly not a fool. Marilyn wanted to choose her stories, control her narrative, speak her truth through film. In a world ruled by powerful men, she tried to carve out her own space, her own dignity. Still, the cost of her strength was loneliness. The more she asserted herself, the more isolated she became. Relationships came and went. Joe DiMaggio, Arthur Miller, each love full of promise, each loss heavy with heartbreak. She craved a love that saw her, not just her silhouette, but how do you love freely when the world is always watching? How do you stay soft in a business built on hardness? There were moments when the mask slipped, just for a second. A sudden tear in a press conference, a tired glance on a film set, a pause in her voice during an interview. In those fleeting cracks, the real Marilyn shone through, not the fantasy but the human being, vulnerable, exhausted, yet still trying. She turned pain into performance. In Bus Stop, we saw her ache. In The Misfits, we saw her unravel. These weren't roles, they were reflections, fragments of her soul placed delicately on film. Critics were stunned. Finally, they began to see what she had known all along, that Marilyn Monroe wasn't just a star. She was an artist. But fame has no mercy. The more she gave, the more was taken. Pills to sleep, pills to wake, pills to calm her nerves before facing the cameras. It became a cycle, not of indulgence, but of survival. She was surrounded by people, yet painfully alone. Used by studios, manipulated by publicists, courted by presidents, and followed by the press. Privacy was a memory, peace a distant hope. Still she smiled, still she posed, still she tried. She never stopped yearning to be a mother, to be understood, to be respected. Her miscarriages broke her in ways words couldn't mend. Her artistic rejections left bruises deeper than applause could heal. And yet, she remained a symbol of joy, desire, and power to the public. A tragic paradox, wearing diamonds and a dreamy grin. As the 1960s dawned, her world grew dimmer. Roles became scarcer, rumors louder, and though her legend was still growing, her light flickered. She began work on Something's Got to Give, a film that would never be finished. She arrived late, battled illness, fought to be taken seriously. Even as the industry whispered about her decline, she still believed in the next scene, the next script, the next chance, because beneath it all, Marilyn Monroe still hoped, still dreamed, still reached for something true in a world addicted to illusion. And then, one summer night in 1962, the curtain fell. The world woke up to headlines, disbelief, and sorrow. Marilyn Monroe, dead at 36, gone far too soon. The mystery of her death only added to the myth. But what mattered more than how she died was how she lived, how she fought, how she gave, how she turned pain into art and became a mirror in which the world saw its own hunger for beauty, for success, for love. Her passing wasn't just the end of a life, it was the beginning of a legend. Marilyn Monroe is no longer with us, yet somehow she never left. More than 60 years have passed since she walked among us, but her image still graces walls, screens, stages, and dreams. She has become immortal, not because she wanted to, but because the world never let her go. That face, that voice, that walk, they echo through generations, as if the universe itself refuses to forget her. But behind the glitter and fame, there was always a girl named Norma Jeane, a child who once clutched her little suitcase through the corridors of foster homes, a young woman who stared into mirrors, wondering if she'd ever be enough, a soul who longed not for applause, but for arms that held her when the crowds were gone. And yet she transformed herself. She took pain and turned it into radiance. She learned to pose, to smile, to seduce the camera, yes. But more importantly, she learned to fight. For roles, for respect, for a place at the table. She stood tall in a world that told women to sit quietly and look pretty. Was she flawless? No, but that's precisely what makes her unforgettable. She was vulnerable, often insecure, always reaching. And in that humanity, she became universal. She was every woman who felt unseen, every dreamer who feared the fall, every soul who smiled through sorrow. That's what made her magic. The tragedy of Marilyn Monroe lies not just in her death, but in the fact that the world wanted her to be an idea more than a person. They loved the icon but struggled with the woman. They adored her beauty but overlooked her brilliance. In the rush to turn her into a myth, they missed the heartbeat underneath. Yet in the silence she left behind, something remarkable happened. The world began to see her not just as a symbol, but as a survivor, a trailblazer, a woman who dared to rise above her origin story and shape her own destiny, no matter how many times she stumbled along the way. Marilyn Monroe's story is not just one of glamour or grief, it's a story of becoming, of battling demons behind a dazzling smile, of wanting to be loved not as an image, but as a human being. And maybe, just maybe, that's why we still speak her name. Because Marilyn wasn't just a star in the sky, she was the flame beneath it, burning bright, burning fast, but never quite fading. She taught us that beauty is fleeting, but courage lingers, that fame is fragile, but truth leaves footprints, that even the most delicate voice can echo for eternity. So when we remember Marilyn Monroe, let's not only remember the legend, let's remember the woman, the warrior, the spark, gone too soon, but glowing forever. The past is not forgotten. It lives again through these stories, these images, and these voices. Thank you for joining us in History Gets Alive. Until next time, keep remembering, keep reflecting, and don't forget to subscribe our channel.